Oh, sorry. This whole time thing is really always messes me up. And every place I've presented in the last 3 days has been central. You would think I'd have it down by now.
Yeah. But this is just, there we go.
I just want to make sure that I have it shared because I thought I did that with everyone and then obviously I didn't. So let me just double check that before we start. Anyone? Okay. Yeah, I somehow missed that on this one. Okay, we're good now.
You are all set to go as soon as the time hits. And again, there is about a 30-second delay.
Yeah, it went fine. It wasn't, it worked fine. I just had to kind of plan ahead and ask the questions,
Yeah. So
or
that's great.
Or put it in the social also. It was fine. Okay, it is 9:45 and we're going to go ahead and get started because I have so much goodness to share with all of you. So as you're joining, I'm putting the link for the bit.ly in the chat. Oh, you're coming back to kindergarten. That's awesome. So if you would like to let me know what types of littles you teach in the social wall, that is awesome. I would love to know what kind of littles you work with. I work with I'm an elementary school technology specialist, and I am so excited you're here with me today. I'm Debbie Tannenbaum, and you can find me on social media at Tannenbaum Tech, and I am just thrilled to be here with you. And I'm so excited to get the chance to know all of you. Awesome. So with that being said, let me give you a little bit of information about me as you share some information about you. So I just finished my 21st year in education a couple of days ago. I am a tech coach in an elementary school in Fairfax County, Virginia. I blog on Tannenbaum Tech, and I have for about 2.5 years. You can pretty much find me anywhere at Tannenbaum Tech, on Twitter, on Instagram, LinkedIn, Voxer, Clubhouse. I now have a Facebook group that I'm using to support educators. And in addition, I am super proud. Last month on my birthday, I published my book, Transform Techie Notes to Make Learning Sticky. Today's session is mostly from chapter 4, which is all about empowering and nurturing student agency. And I'm super excited to share this with you. So you'll see there are lots of programs that I am a very big supporter of, and we'll talk about quite a few of these during today's session. Awesome. Perfect. So we're going to get started. Today we're going to do a couple of different things, but to get us started, I want you to tell me, I want to see a little bit about what everybody here knows. So I'm going to go ahead and share a Jamboard link with you. This is what I would like you to do. I am going to give you a few minutes to tell me what words come to your mind when you think about creating with littles. The way this is going to work, click the sticky note, write whatever your idea is, choose your color, and then it will move and you'll be able to work there. What words come to your mind when you think about creating with littles? I'm going to give you 3 minutes to get started on that. Okay, I am so appreciative of all the great comments. I see hands-on, exploratory, keeping them engaged, modeling. The one in the blue where you talk about a time constraint of a 30-minute library class where I teach as part of the master schedule, we have 30-minute tech classes. So I am definitely going to give you some great tips there as well. Lots of great ideas to get us started. So we're going to come back to that later. And today we're going to do 3 main things. We're first going to talk about promoting student agency. We're going to do a tech tools jigsaw meant for littles. And then we're going to end with some ideas to try tomorrow. So when we thought about those words earlier, we came up with lots of different words. What we're going to do now is we're going to really think about how we can respond to them. And back in 2018, I was a brand new tech coach. And I was teaching kindergarten to 6th grade, and we had half an hour technology classes. And when the kindergartners came in and they left, I felt like I had been through a hurricane. one kid would have a question and they'd pop up, and another kid would pop up and they'd have one and they'd fall down. It was like playing this giant game of whack-a-mole. And I was really tired. And when kindergarten came, I was like, oh God, it's kindergarten. And as I was driving to work, I was listening to the 10-minute teacher podcast with Vicki Davis, and she was interviewing Pana Asavatana, who's on the screen, who I'm going to show you a clip from. And as I listened to her speak about her littles and how she was trying to teach them to use iPads, suddenly things changed for me. So I'm going to let you go ahead and listen to that and see if you understand why.
So when I shifted from being an early childhood classroom teacher to being a technology and design coach, I had lots of ideas. And I see this with teachers all around the world. They get new technology, they get really excited about, oh, I can use the iPad to make videos, I can get my kids to draw, they can record their voices, and we get really tied up in the product of what our students could possibly create. But what I started to notice after a year or two of being in my new role was that no matter how carefully I thought I had introduced the instructions to a new app or a tool, or how well I might have created an anchor chart with all the steps for the procedure, I always had students constantly asking me, Miss A, what do I do next? And I had iPads being shoved in front of my face. They couldn't really hold the steps in their heads. And at first I thought, well, maybe it's because they're young, they need some time to get used to it. But after a while, I started to notice that nothing was changing. They weren't becoming more independent users of digital tools. So I had to ask myself, what was I missing? And what I started to realize was that I was handing my students digital tools without acknowledging that these tools came with a series of concepts and literacies that I wasn't teaching them. It was like handing my students a book and asking them to read without ever teaching them anything about letters or sounds. You see, our job as educators is to put handles on learning, to make learning easy for them to grab onto and take with them from one scenario to the next. So what types of handles did my students need to become more independent users of digital tools?
So with that in mind, get out of here. There we go. With that in mind, I needed to figure out how I could put handles on technology to make it easier for my students to grab onto. And so in here, she talks about how she started to teach her students icons, and how by teaching them the icons, they gained proficiency and they were better able to help themselves. So when I heard this, I loved it. I was like, this makes perfect sense. And I agree, Leslie, super powerful. And so I thought, in her video, and this, I only showed you a small clip of the video. You should definitely watch the whole thing in the bit.ly. She talks about how she started teaching them those icons and incorporating them like in a morning message, almost like a rebus where you have those icons there. And so this is an example of it. We started learning and explaining what they meant. Now, no matter what I told my kindergartners, this was always the Google Circle. And eventually I just went with it and didn't stop trying to call it Google Chrome. But they would understand that they had to click the Google Circle to get started. They would understand they'd have to then click classes and go to their Google Classroom. They started to identify these things and identify what KinderTech was, so that when we were doing activities, they were better able to help themselves. Now, as I continued to work on this, being weird, I noticed that I was building more and more icon literacy. And so it wasn't just a couple of things, but we were building. And I said, wait, this looks like a word wall to me. And so I put these letters up on my wall in my lab and we started building. Now, at first, this was only something I really used with my kindergartners and my first graders. But then one day, one of my fifth graders goes, you added something under you. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, you keep adding all those computer symbols up here. And when that student said that, I was like, well, maybe I should be trying this with all my students, that whole idea of universal design for learning and what's good for some students is good for all students. And so I started using these icons in everything that I taught my students. And so I no longer had to explain to my students that that symbol meant that there was a menu and that they could find more things there. I no longer had to explain to my students what that sign meant, that they were finding something. They understood them because I was intentionally teaching them. In my second year as a tech coach, I decided to take it up a level. And what I decided is we were using learning targets and how powerful it would be if we used them in our learning targets. My students began to learn that this was a laptop. Now, something my little one struggled with was the difference between a username and a password. By putting this icon on our word wall and teaching it intentionally, they knew that that was their username. We made it the sign 7 because it was 7 digits they had to type in. Can you imagine they have to make kindergartners type in 7 digits? And then their password was the one that locked it out, and that their password was private and they shouldn't share it. So we added some signs to it as well. I also noticed I had a half an hour like we talked about, and I was running out of time. But by adding pictures and getting rid of some of the words, it made it even more accessible. My students now knew that they clicked on Google Chrome, that they clicked their classroom and then typed in their password. We were intentionally showing them the steps. And in this particular activity, these were the tools they were going to need. And that was great. But I have a really long rectangular room and kids couldn't see everything. So I started then printing them out and putting them so every student in the room could intentionally see them. And things definitely started to change. I'm a big proponent of thinking routines and Project Zero. And I had gone to this talk by Ron Richard, and he had talked about the language of initiative. He had asked us, who's doing the thinking? Are you asking questions that promote agency and thinking, or are you rescuing our students? Do we believe the answers are within them? So I thought about how icons could help me with that. When a student raised their hand and asked a question, was I answering it, or was I asking them to tell me what step they were on? And a student would say, well, I'm on step 4. And I would say, okay, now let's look at step 5 and figure out what we need to do. And versus me giving the answers, I was really promoting that agency and really giving the students the time to talk. The person who talks the most is the person who learns in our classrooms, since we want to make sure that we give our students that time. In addition, my older students were using Shapegrams by Tony Vincent, who I'm a huge fan of. And I was noticing as they were watching his videos, and his videos show how to do Google Drawings, which is amazing. They were stopping and they were rewinding and they were watching it again and they were controlling the pace. Well, if that worked for my 3rd graders, maybe it was going to work for my little ones too. And so I started creating videos for my students and linking them to the activities so that they could also help themselves. So it really became super important as we did all of these things. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take some time to process. If you go back to that Jamboard that you were in previously, I want you to kind of just take some time to reflect, because if we don't reflect, then we really don't internalize things. And I would love for you to go to page number 2. And on page number 2, what I would like for you to do is I would like you to consider the following. Can you come up with a word that struck you as being really powerful or captured your attention from what we just talked about? Can you add a phrase that moved, engaged, or provoked you? And can you add a sentence that was meaningful to you or you feel captured the core idea? We're going to work together to make meaning of this. And so you can either use the text box or the sticky note to share your thoughts. And so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes right now to do that before we move on and take it to the next step. Make sure as you're working, you're either using the sticky note or the text box. They're going to be your easiest tools to use. About 30 more seconds. Okay, I see so many great comments here about support and agency and icon literacy, putting those handles on. What are you promoting? Identifying. So we really want to be intentional. It's funny because when I first became an educator, I wanted to be an elementary school French teacher. Didn't end up doing that, but I think about technology and I think about languages. And a lot of times what I think about is the fact that when you're talking about language, technology has a language in and of itself. And so all of these icons, they're like the language of technology. So it makes sense we need to teach them. And LaPetra, you asked about how am I using a template for Jamboard? So nice little trick. I'll just share this quickly. That if you take, and this is actually from Slides Mania, if you take this out of your Google Slides and you download it as an image, you can then set the background and bring it in. So it's one of my favorite things to do. And I'm going to go ahead and put, somebody had just asked for the bit.ly link. I'm going to put that in one more time for all of you as well. So I love all of these things. Great reflections. So with that being said, let's focus a little bit more on our tech tools. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an overview of 4 different tech tools that I think are great for littles. And then I'm going to give you some time to explore one of your choice. So giving you some agency as well. Some of these you might be familiar with, and I'll show you a different way to use them. And some of them you're going to say, I've never heard of them before. And that's okay, because they're all valid tech tools. So the first one I'm going to share with you is Wixie. And I love Wixie. It's funny because when I first encountered Wixie, I didn't understand why people liked it. And I was teaching my students how to use Google Apps, and I was all excited. And one of my kids goes, this looks just like Wixie. And I finally reached out to another tech coach to learn about Wixie. And when I did, I was very happily surprised. I love Wixie, and they keep upping their game. It's a kid-friendly creation tool used in my district. It does have a cost associated with it. It's about $5 per student without a contract. But I love it because it allows our students to share ideas with multiple modalities. They can use a pen and draw or paint. There's so many stickers that are royalty free, and they don't have to worry about citations. They can use text and make speech bubbles. They can add video in now. They can use voice. All of those things are available for your students in one program. I also love it because it gives your students choice because you have all that available. It also has a Teams feature where you can work collaboratively in classes, and teachers can actually set that up. And it has this great interface. In our school, it interfaces directly with our student information system, and you can actually click on an assignment that you've assigned to students and see their work. You can take their work and put it in a class book to share. It's just amazing. So here's one example of using Wixie that I've done with one of my classes. This is a first grade example. And so when we look at this one, once again, you're going to see those icons being built in so the students know exactly what they needed to do. And when we're there, this assignment asks them to look at a kid-friendly database called PebbleGo and read an article or listen to an article about forces. So once again, giving them those multiple means of engagement. And then they had to draw a picture of a force acting on an object. Now, this is a very open-ended prompt. I love to give my students these open-ended prompts because I want to get some of their background knowledge in, and I want it to be engaging. This particular student decided just to use the paintbrush and create an image of her shooting a basketball. I had other students who used stickers. I had students who did a combination of those things. But all of them, I've seen wagons, I've seen fishing poles, whatever. All are great, but they're all showing an understanding of the standard. And that's the important part when we're using tech. It's not about using tech for tech, but that we're giving kids multiple opportunities to demonstrate their understanding. So here's some of the things that Wixie has inside that just makes it so awesome. And Wixie has another update coming this summer, and I can't wait to see what's next. You can have multiple pages, so you can make like a slideshow. You can add all of the images royalty free. You have text, you have video. Video is a new thing that happened this current year, and you can have more than one video per slide. So you could have students answering more than one question. It is similar to Seesaw in many ways, but there's some things Wixie has that Seesaw doesn't, and some things Seesaw has that Wixie doesn't. There isn't a pairing component like Seesaw, but Wixie has some features like cloning that Seesaw doesn't have. So it's, you always have to compare the two, but I would say that they're relatively similar in that sense. You have the opportunity to just have audio. You have your shapes, you have your paint bucket, all of your normal drawing tools. But in addition to that, you have multiple fonts. When Wixie first started, we didn't have that. You have a slider, so it's easy for them to figure out the sizing. But my favorite part as far as the text goes is this bubble, which you can barely see. If you type text and you click bubble, it automatically turns it into a speech bubble. Really great for comics. And it has this really great ability to print comics. So I really love using it. You also have this record where you can record audio per slide. So we're going to now switch Flipgrids. We're going to switch tools, and we're going to talk a little bit about Flipgrid. Flipgrid is another tool that I love using with my littles. And Flipgrid is one of those tools that is also constantly improving. In fact, in 10 days, they have Flipgrid Live. And if you've never watched Flipgrid Live before, you should, because it's always a fun party. They actually sent me these cool sunglasses to wear. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. And I hope, knocking on wood, that some of their updates are just going to continue to help it evolve. I have a couple of ideas of what they might be, but I'm not going to share them because I'm not sure if they're right. I love Flipgrid because it gives voice to all of our students, even our shy ones. It gives them a safe place to practice sharing. This current year in my setting, we had some kids in person and some kids who were virtual in the same class. It helped us to build community. It helps them to share what they're thinking. Now, it used to be when Wixie didn't have video that I would kind of app smash these two together. Now that Wixie has video, I don't always feel like I need to go to Flipgrid if I'm just having them do a simple reflection. However, Flipgrid has tools that Wixie does not have for video. So you have to kind of consider what your purpose is for using that, having kids use video. A simple example with nothing fancy, having students share an introduction. My second graders made portfolios and they had an all about me page. And what a better way to help others to get to know them than to include their video inside. You'll notice that I have a little link here. I like to help my students. This is a second grade example, kind of plan out their thoughts. So I would use a slide in order to help them kind of plan out their thoughts. They also could have used that sticky note. But inside of Flipgrid is so much, and it continues to grow. As a littles teacher, there is a discovery library that is full of examples done by teachers just like us. You can search it by age, by subject, and when you find something you like, you can copy it to your grid and use it with your students. It's that simple. We don't always need to make things complicated. So I really, really like that. I also love the fact that it has this shorts video editor, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a minute. Many times when I want to promote agency, I create videos for my students. Shorts videos cannot be longer than 10 minutes. And when we think about videos, they really shouldn't be more than 1 minute more than the age of our students. So we don't want to make videos that are that long. But I love that when we use shorts, it has a screencast option. So I can screen record things and show my students what I want them to do. Plus, when students create videos, they have all those options as well. And as I show you the shorts camera, you're going to see that icons are there as well. Those are icons we can teach our students to help promote that agency. Plus, we can take our videos and combine them into mixtapes. We can also connect them with other kids around other educate classes around the world. There's just so much in there. So this is the Flipgrid Shorts camera as of right now. I guarantee it's going to change in 10 days, but right now it's good. And so some of the things it has, they can do mic only mode if they're shy and they don't want to be on camera. They can mute and just do things without sound. They can record their screen. Students can also play with filters. They can add text onto their screens. It used to be you only could add one type of text. Now there's multiple types. You can draw on your screen. They can add boards like a whiteboard or a graph paper or cool frames and things like that so that they can use that to draw and work on. They can bring other graphics in as stickers. They can add frames. There's so much in there. So as you look at what's up there, thinking about those icons again, you can see why I think it's a great tool to use for littles, because if you've taught these icons to your students, and it makes it much easier for them to use this program. They don't have to be able to be proficient readers to use this. They just have to recognize those icons. So next tool we're going to talk about is Pear Deck. Some schools are Pear Deck schools and some are Nearpod schools. I happen to be a Pear Deck school. So what I'm going to show you, if you are a Nearpod person, will probably apply as well. I just happen to be Team Pear Deck. There are 6 different types of interactive slides that take your Google Slides and allow you to make it interactive. So you have drawing slides, which is my favorite with littles, draggable slides, which I also like to use with littles. You have text and number and multiple choice and website, which is also really great with our littles because it helps our littles to make things easier to find. Teachers can see students' work as they're working and give them immediate feedback. So rather than having a classroom where you call on maybe 4 students, everybody's opinion matters. Everybody can get feedback. You can also display their work anonymously to the class. It used to be the only way you could get feedback at the end was with student takeaways. They just made a recent update, and now you can actually use this thing called review and reflect, where teachers can give feedback after the fact and students can see it inside of their Pear Decks. And you can download everything. I know that's been really important for our primary teachers as far as having artifacts of student learning. When you're using it, you have a couple different ways you can use it. They have a huge template library. In fact, they have a template library that is just for littles that I'll show you in a minute. They have subjects-based, so many templates. In addition, you can take any of your pre-made slides, and by clicking one of these buttons, you can make them interactive. If you do not have Premium Pear Deck, and you find Premium Pear Deck is the drawing and the draggable, and you find one in here that's a drawing or draggable, you can still create your own, but you're going to miss some of the features, but it's a great program. Here's an example of how students can use Pear Deck. Students were sharing their favorite distance learning activity. Every student is able to draw and share the reflections. They could use just drawing like these students did. They could also add text, but they're all able to share, and I'm able to share it anonymously if the student doesn't want to be called out by name. And then sometimes I'll have a kid who will say, I want to share, and I'm able to highlight that kid and then show their work and have that child explain it. When we share Pear Deck, we can do it in more than one way. We can share it as a synchronous lesson, which is instructor paced, or as a student paced lesson, which is asynchronous. I loved using the asynchronous mode for during my center time, because I could give the students the link to the Pear Deck and they could work on it during their asynchronous time, and I would still be able to then give them feedback after the fact. It was engaging for them. It kept them involved. I could include audio directions, because you can include audio directions in there, and it created an environment where it provided them that agency again. When you do share it, it says that you can have them type in this code. Even my 6th graders cannot type join PD correctly. I don't know why. You can also copy that code, and it's much easier. You can add it to your Google Classroom, your LMS, or your chat, depending on how you're teaching. So those tool we're going to talk about, this is our last tool before we give a chance to explore, is Google Slides. Now, we're using Google Slides right now in a very traditional way. I like to use Google Slides in an untraditional way when I'm working with my littles. My 1st grade team this year embraced this beyond belief. So most of what I'm sharing is from them. You can link things within a slide deck. You can embed videos and photographs. You can change the size of your canvas, and your students can work on them collaboratively. This is an example from Valentine's Day. All students started with this. They were each assigned a slide, and they got to customize Valentines. We couldn't have Valentines that we passed out like we had in the past because they couldn't touch things. This was a great way for every kid to be able to create a Valentine's for their classmates. And just really, and everything they needed was here. And all they had to do was move it over, personalize it, and add their note. When we're talking about using Google Slides, the easiest way to get in is to go to slides.new. Oops, too fast. You can show your students how to add that text. Once again, you see that icon support again, bold, italics, underline, giving them those options, showing them how to add images. A lot of the times when I see my younger kids using this, they've been using a template where there's images provided, which I feel like helps a lot, but we can teach them how to do that. You'll see all those icons again. And my students love word art. They love creating really creative works of art. So we're going to stop for a minute. And what we're going to do right now is I am going to give you some time to explore. So I'm going to share with you a different link than the link I've shared with you before. This is for a Padlet, which is not one of the tools we talked about, but I want to use it for this purpose. So let me explain what you're going to do for the next couple of minutes. I have put links to each of the 4 programs up here. Under Wixie, if you decide that's something you want to explore, if you click here, you'll see there's a little try Wixie now. And then you can go ahead and play with that. You have a free 30-day trial. Pear Deck, there's information up here, but there's also, if you click on this, you can make a copy of templates that are made just for littles to get some ideas. Under Flipgrid, you can try out Flipgrid. You can also go and look at their Discovery library after you log in and see what ideas they have for littles. With Google Slides, you can open up Google Slides and experiment. Teresa Wills, who's a professor at a university near where I live, she's created all of these amazing resources. And it's definitely, if you click on templates, you can see she has all these templates, and a lot of these will apply to things that you can do for littles. So it's definitely worth checking out. In the 8 minutes I'm going to give you, if after watching this, there's something that really resonates with you and you want to add it, because this is yours to use, this will never go away. If you click on the plus sign, you can add comments of sharing your noticings and your wonderings. So with that being said, I am going to stop talking and give you guys some time to explore. When we come back in 8 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to do a reflection to share some of the things that we've explored, but I do want you to have a chance to explore. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them on the social wall. Oops, the link didn't go through. The link should have gone through now. Sorry about that. Okay. Ooh, that is loud. So what we're going to do is I've given you some time to explore. And what I'd love for you to do is go ahead back to that Jamboard. And what we're going to do is I would love for us to share some of our explorations with each other. So all you need to do is, oops, wrong place. Let's go back to the Jamboard. Is go to page 3. And this is what I would like for you to share. How does the program you explored connect to what you already know? How does the program you explore extend or add to your thinking about creating with littles? And then what challenges you about using this program? So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to go ahead right now and add to that Jamboard. So I'm going to leave the directions up on the screen because I want to make sure you have those prompts. So how does it connect? How does it extend, and what challenges you? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start giving you 2 minutes. If we need more than that, I'm happy to do that. So once again, I also have put the questions in the social wall as well. So in the Jamboard, how does this connect, what you explored, connect to what you know? How does it extend your thinking? And how does it challenge you? So you can go ahead and use those sticky notes to add this into the Jamboard. And we are on page I'm going to give you guys about 30 more seconds to add to that. And then we're going to share. So I'm going to share with you some ideas that you can try the next time you're with students. Okay, I see lots of good things here. Um, I see people talking about adding Pear Deck in, about comparing Pear Deck with Nearpod, trying Pear Deck for the first time. Um, there are a lot of things on the Flipgrid site. Definitely check it out. I really like this. Perfect. So we're going to finish up today with the ideas that you can try tomorrow, which I obviously know none of us are at school right now. So there are ideas you can try the next time you have students. So if you are interested in Wixie, all of the Wixie ones are actually linked. So if you click on any of these, then you can log in with your trial Wixie account and actually try them out. So I'm just going to give you an overview of each and give you an idea of why Wixie is the program that I like to use so much. This is called The Shape of Things. They start off with a circle. It's actually based after a book, and they get a chance to turn a circle into something else. A circle is just a circle until you add, and then it becomes every year I have a kid who turns this into Google Chrome. The rectangle, I've seen chocolate bars, trucks, all sorts of cool things. Picture frames, the triangle and the square. Every student gets to do such a great way to show divergent thinking. This is time stories. They draw their own hands on the clock. They can add what they want using words, using pictures, using video or voice for each one. Shadows. They pick 3 pictures and they have to show where the sunlight's coming from. And then they use the paintbrush to draw the shadows with black. That's a kindergarten activity and they love it. This is one of the reasons I really love Wixie. All of these shapes are cloned and you can create them as clones. And so when you move that triangle, there's unlimited copies of it. So students can create their shapes collage, and then they can identify how many of each shape there are. Really fun activity. Flipgrid ideas. These are all things I've done with students in Flipgrid in the past. In 2018, my first graders did a election and to learn about elections, and it was between Clifford, Froggy, and Curious George. And they had to make a Flipgrid explaining why they voted for who they voted for. They loved it. That force is one I showed you earlier. Originally, I had students bring their pictures in to Flipgrid to share. Anytime we have our students creating something, we can have them explain it in Flipgrid. My second graders created weather reports using all of those cool stickers. As far as my second graders, they were learning about what makes something a computer using some of the Hello Ruby books. And they did a flip hunt where they had to record examples of where they found things that they thought were computers in the room. But there's so many examples in the Discovery Library. These are just a few samples. Pear Deck has their own templates, and these 2 are from their templates. But one of the things I want to point out, these 2 are from Common Sense Media. And I was able to bring them into Google Slides and then put a drawing slide on top of them. And now all my students can participate. So sometimes it can be really simple and powerful. Google Slides. My first grade team is responsible for most of these. They created this so that they could create a gingerbread man. All of the things are on the side for them to use. This is a treasure map. Everything's in the margins for them to use. They customize it and they are creating based on their own what they wanted to create. This one is not from my first grade team. It's actually from Casey Bell of Shake Up Learning. And in this example, she saved all these words as images, and then they, like refrigerator magnets, they can bring them up and play with them. So we're going to do one last reflection as we get ready to close things up for today. It is the same link as before, and we are now on page 4, our last page. So pick one of these to do some reflection on after being in this session, and I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed interacting with all of you. Share what's the most important point. What's something that you're finding challenging, puzzling, or difficult to understand? A question you would like most to discuss or something you found interesting. All of the things that I've used with you in the Jamboard are examples of thinking routines. And in 20 minutes, I'm doing a session on those specifically, not just for littles, but for anyone. So please go ahead and add a sticky note in for those. And while you're doing that, I am going to put one other link in the chat that I want to share with you. I do really value feedback. And so I'm going to give you a link to a feedback survey. In that feedback survey that you'll get a chance to look at. If you are interested, my feeling is when I do a presentation, I'm hoping to kind of start a connection and learn from each other. So if you're interested, you can opt into a mailing list where I send email newsletter every Tuesday with some tech tips. In addition, if you would like, I have Tannenbaum tech stickers. There we go. You're welcome to, definitely ask for those. I'm happy to mail those to you. And, just give me some feedback. I really enjoyed working with all of you today, but I would appreciate it if you can add to that Jamboard and share some things that really resonated with you today. I love these. I love seeing all the feedback. And you should be on page 4. I love that littles can participate in lessons with technology. Yay. All of our kids can do that. Absolutely. I think the most important thing to really consider is find one of these tools that you really feel like will work for you and have your students practice using them for more than one thing. The goal of using technology is never to use everything. I've heard it talked about on Jake Miller's podcast, like being a hardware store. And you can go into a hardware store and there are so many tools, but you're never going to use all of them. Find a couple that you really think are important. When I think about technology, I have my 10 that I talk about in here. And then I have 5 that I consider on my tool belt that I use all the time. And then the other 5 that I pull out of my toolbox as needed. So really important to kind of remember that. So, and then in addition, as we get ready to close out, like I said, a lot of this is from my book. I am by no means asking you to buy my book, but if the things I'm sharing with you have resonated today, there is a link. I sell it on my website with a signed copy, or you can also get it off of Amazon. In addition to that, I have several blog posts that are all about working with littles on my website, and they're all linked at the end of this presentation. So you can absolutely check them out. You have my email address and my website. Please feel free to check out any of those links. I really value this work. I love what I do. And it gives me no greater pleasure than to see educators taking some of the things I've shared and putting it into action. And then I actually end up learning from those educators because I've learned ways that I wouldn't have thought of as well. So, let's keep that going, keep that mindset that all of our littles can learn. And we want all of our littles to be able to be creators. It's just so important. And somebody asked, would you introduce the type of tools in a certain sequence? When it comes to my littles, my kindergartners, I usually start with Wixie because I find that it's the most versatile tool to get started with. And that's where I usually start with my students. By the end of the year, I'm able to introduce them to things like Flipgrid and Pear Deck. But I know like this current year, we use Pear Deck pretty much all the time in all of the grade levels because we were virtual for a good chunk of the year. So, but I think the easiest one to explore with is the one that you feel the most comfortable with, because if you feel comfortable with it, you're more likely to use it. These are great comments. Thank you, everyone. Time really flies when you're having fun. Wow, I can't believe we're down to 1 minute. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the social wall. Like I said, I do really value feedback, and you guys have done a great job participating. I'm so glad that you're getting the idea of that, promoting that agency. It changed my life. If somebody had told me 4 years ago that I would be talking about creating with littles, I would have been like, oh, littles, that's exhausting. I'm playing whack-a-mole. I don't feel that way anymore. So I think that we had sometimes rather than working harder, we have to work a little different. And by teaching those kids those icons, we do. And it looks like it is 10:45 for you guys. So like I said, if you're interested in joining me in 15 minutes, I'm talking all about amplifying thinking routines using technology tools. And I really appreciate your time coming on a Friday, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day. And if you have any questions until the recording goes off, you can feel free to add them into the social wall.
Recording stopped.